two, three, four.
Hi everyone, this is Jewish Talk coming to you from Nassau Community College on 90.3 WHBC. Also streaming on the iHeart and the iTunes app. This program is later archived on Spreaker.com. This program is repeated on Sunday evenings at 11 p.m. Wow. So hi there, my name is Rabbi Perl. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good Erev Purim. This all depends, of course, when you're listening or watching. Gavald, you can also see us on Facebook Live at WHBC or my own page at facebook.com. My name, Anshul Pearl. So hello. Hello on radio, hello online, and hello to the world. And what a hello we do get today, because there are those of us who are lucky to live on Long Island and there's no snow, and then there's, of course, snowy Vermont. Unbelievable. What a way to... Some people have a white Hanukkah, and there are those like the Kolshevskis who are enjoying a white Purim. Let's talk a little about Purim. Purim is the holiday that we are celebrating tomorrow evening, Monday, all the way through Tuesday. Let's just briefly remind ourselves of how we celebrate it, and, of course, encourage everyone to celebrate it in a meaningful way, in a complete way. So good morning, everybody. Of course, tomorrow, the eve of this holiday of Purim, is introduced with a fast of Esther. It's observed as a fast day in commemoration of the fast observed by Mordechai, Esther, and all the Jewish people at that time. So tomorrow is the 13th day of Adar, and it is a fast day. As indeed the Megillah tells us, in preparation for Esther to present herself to the king Achashverosh, she asked everyone to fast. And so tomorrow we remember her fast called Tanis Esther. We identify with our great leaders. We identify with each other. And please remember the fast begins tomorrow morning at 4:56 a.m. I'm talking about on Long Island. And ends at 6:19 here on Long Island. And it depends if you're in other parts of the country or world. Check it up on your own calendar. So unlike Yom Kippur, this fast... therefore, is if you have any health issues or you're living through a pandemic or whatever, contact your rabbi for guidance. But generally speaking, hopefully we're all well and we can fast tomorrow. Now, tomorrow evening, head to your local Chabad, head to your local synagogue and temple for the reading of the whole Megillah. There's a mitzvah to hear the Megillah, the book of Esther, that tells us the entire Purim story. And again, Queen Esther asked that we listen to the reading of the Megillah twice, once Purim night and again on Purim day. And then, of course, we all know, as soon as we hear the name Haman, we get to work and we twirl our graggers, and we're going to discuss more about these significant noisemakers. Or you can, if you don't have a gragger, don't get nervous, just bring along your feet and... stamp your feet to eradicate Haman's name. Now, there's also 4 special mitzvahs, 4 special commemorations and observances that this holiday brings about. Of course, just what I just mentioned, here the Megillah. The Megillah is also known as the Book of Esther. Of course, it tells us the entire Purim story. And as I just mentioned, it's Queen Esther who is asking us to please come and listen once in the evening and once by day. The second important mitzvah is the mitzvah of charity. It's called Matonos Le'evyonim. We give money or food to at least 2 needy people during the daylight hours of Purim. This mitzvah obviously brings joy to the poor, and surprisingly, you will notice that the giver also experiences intense joy by giving. So, give joy and get joy. Now, it's important to give it on the day itself, if you can. I remember when I was in Paris, and we lived, our yeshiva was way out in the banlieue, which is the French word in the suburbs, so it was far away from any, homeless and other issues in Paris. So we would actually send a gentleman, we would pool our money together, and he would go to the Pletzel, we would go to Paris, to the areas where there would be poor people, and he would, on our behalf, give this charity to at least 2 needy persons. And so please, if you don't live in such a neighborhood or you don't have access to such people, what we do is you put it aside and then either send a check after the holiday or even before. But during the day, it's very important for us to remember those who are less fortunate. And in fact, these particular mitzvahs I'm talking to you about are actually mentioned in the Megillah. It's not just made up. It's part of what Esther asks of us. So Matanis Levyonim is called the charity for the poor people. So we give to help at least 2 needy persons. Then we have it called Mashloach Manas, this third mitzvah, which is gifts of food. We send a package containing at least 2 different ready-to-eat items and or beverages, like a pastry, a fruit, a beverage, to at least one acquaintance during the daylight hours of Purim, and this is called Mishloach Manas. In our shul, we have the custom, and I'm inviting everyone to join us at 7 a.m. on Tuesday morning, 7 a.m., and you'll be able to hear the Megillah at about approximately 7:20. And during the morning gathering, we exchange, we bring along Shalach Manas, and everybody coming can perform this mitzvah right there in the gathering. And the fourth mitzvah that we have for this great holiday of Purim is the festival meal. Just like all holidays, have a special gathering and sit down, a meal. We also on Purim enjoy a festive Purim meal with challah or bread. We celebrate it with good food and fine wine. And it's called the Sudas Purim. So we have 4 mitzvahs: reading the Megillah, Matanis Levyonim, Mishloach Manos, and the Sudas Purim, the special festival meal. Now on Purim, children and sometimes those who are adventurous amongst us traditionally dress in costumes. And the reason why we will find many people dressed up on this Purim day, it's to allude to God's veiled hand in the Purim miracle, which was hidden behind natural events. And of course, just to remind ourselves that in Jerusalem, which is a walled city, the Purim is again observed on the 15th day of Adar. This is to commemorate the fact that the ancient walled city of Shushan, where this whole story of Purim took place, was a walled city, and therefore we also extend this to all walled cities as well. So let's get right into it. Good morning to Linda. Good morning to Label and to Denise. And let's see now all those who are posting. If you have any questions or thoughts, I'm more than happy to recognize them. Let's see now. We have, can we use caffeine? Let's see now. Okay, that's for those who are, okay, we'll discuss that off the air, whether we can use a caffeine suppository during the fast day. I think Kim is very excited over here about it. Anyway, how did I schlep you into this one? Anyway, so let's, you know what, I was thinking that today I would begin talking a little bit about a guide, at least, to living with gratitude. Live with gratitude. You know, when we celebrate a holiday, part of it is also gratitude. Gratitude to those who stood up against those who sought to destroy them. And we ourselves the whole world. I bet you, I know that this is, no one's listening, but I think that if there's more gratitude, there will be less wars, and there will be less fighting and infighting and all the things that we have on so many different levels. So let me share a few moments, then we'll get into more about Purim. If you woke up this morning, and I'm hoping that most people listening did wake up, means you have a soul. The wonderful thing about your soul, this life force that we have, is that it's literally a spark of the source of all life. It's God. So it doesn't matter if you're a struggling entrepreneur, a retired doctor, or still a little girl with pigtails. You can every one of us have an actual part of Creator within ourselves. Your soul, the real you, is pure divinity, making each of us pure and holy. Our divine spark also makes us incredibly lovable and unstoppable in our mission. Don't you want to shout it from the rooftops and do a little victory dance? That's what I do every morning. How do I celebrate waking up in the morning? We welcome it with gratitude. The first thing we do when we wake up in the morning is to check the email. Wrong. First thing we do when we wake up in the morning, we go on Wikipedia. Wrong. The first thing we do when we wake up in the morning, we check the news. Wrong. The first thing we do when we wake up in the morning is to give thanks. It's called Moda Ani in Hebrew. It's the Hebrew word for thanks. It's the first word that we use when we begin each day. Starting our day with a specific Hebrew word is not a coincidence. In Hebrew, Moda has the same root as Haida'ah, acknowledgement, meaning when you verbalize your appreciation, you're also announcing to the world that there is a God, and He gave you a divine soul and task. Imagine if you stacked all your daily conversations in a pile, like a deck of cards, and the bottom card would be the word Moda. Let's call that your gratitude card. In this way, your morning routine of saying Moda Ani, I give thanks, operates as your spiritual foundation and core identity behind everything you do throughout that day. Living with gratitude is much more than just feeling thankful at 6 or 7 in the morning. It's the critical step in connecting the dots and recognizing your soul and your life's purpose. Sadly, we don't see our beautiful souls in the mirror. So we identify merely, because we identify merely as our bodies. Unfortunately, many of us tend to get so busy with the morning rush hour traffic or late night meetings that we need a reminder of who we are and why we do what we do. That's where living with gratitude comes in. We all have something to be thankful for, and adopting the habit of saying, thank you, God, is the response to positive experiences, extends this Moda Ani gratitude, and by doing this every morning, it brings awareness to all aspects of the daily life. And the more we say Moda Ani in the morning, the more we're careful about giving thanks, the happier we become all day. Additionally, living in a heightened sense of gratefulness ultimately shifts our focus from specific gifts to a deeper appreciation of life, our soul, and our purpose. Today, more than ever, we all need to hear this simple Moda Ani truths, that we all have this perfectly pure soul, we're lovable, and we're all unstoppable in terms of our mission. So, let's try to incorporate daily gratitude into our life and see how voicing this fundamental truth can actually change our world. Now, the root, someone asked me these questions and therefore I'm addressing it. Our very name is associated with gratitude. The root of the word Jewish is hidden within the ancient Hebrew language, and as we uncover its meaning, we realize that it is a perfect term to define who we are. You say, today, you would call me a Jew, but long ago, in biblical times, this wasn't the common designation. Instead, throughout the Torah, our nation is referred to as Bnei Yisrael, or Hebrews. So where did the term Jew come from? What is its significance? Historically, the first book where we find the term Yehudi used throughout is the book of Esther. In the second chapter, we are introduced to our heroes, and we say, when we talk about Mordechai, Ish Yehudi. A Yehudi, Jewish man, lived in Shushan. His name was Mordechai, and he had raised his cousin, Esther. The term Yehudi, or Jew, carries a lot of historical and cultural significance. It all started about 3,000 years ago, after the golden reign of King Solomon, where the kingdom split into two. The northern kingdom, consisting of 10 out of 12 tribes, retained the name Israel. The southern kingdom, made up of only the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, were named after the larger of the two. Therefore it was called Judah. That's when the inhabitants of Israel's southern kingdom became known as Judeans, or Jews. Tragically, in the 8th century BCE, the mighty Assyrian Empire invaded Israel, conquering the northern kingdom and exiled its inhabitants to unknown places. Therefore, those 10 tribes became known as the 10 lost tribes. However, in the south, the Judeans, the Jews, survived for another 100 years before they were defeated by the Babylonians and taken into captivity in Mesopotamia. Later, when the Persians defeated the Babylonians, the exiled Jews became subjects of Persia and our King Ahasuerus. This is where the Purim story takes place, and that's how you have a Jewish man named Mordechai and Yehudim, Jews living in Shushan. That's the historical and practical background to the term Jew. But of course, there's a deeper story that goes way back to the original Judah and why he was named that. According to the Torah, the name Judah comes from the Hebrew word odeh, which means gratitude. When our matriarch Leah gave birth to her fourth child, she says, Now I will give thanks to Hashem. And she named him Yehuda, or Judah, from the word odeh, to thank. So the term Jew is synonymous with gratitude. The Hebrew word for Jew, odeh, is the same as modeh, which, again, as we're learning today, is the first words in our daily prayers, the first words we say when we wake up in the morning. It is said when we're still lying down as soon as we wake up. And therefore, we begin our day with the word modeh, thankful, before anything else. Before even checking the news or the social media, before even starting the day's activities, we take a moment to reflect on one thing that we know for sure, that we are alive. We woke up. It is an amazing and lucky thing to have our souls restored. It's a moment to realize the importance of our souls and how much gratitude we have for being alive. Whenever we express gratitude for our souls, it reminds us that we are not just physical beings going through the motions of survival. We possess something that transcends this world and is immune to negativity and hardship. It is the breath of God itself, of Himself, and the essence of our being, the core of who we are. Therefore, the term Jew or Jewish gives us a gratitude identity and sets the tone for our entire life. Being such a person means to be rooted in gratitude. This mindset is contagious, and by radiating gratitude, we inspire others to connect to that and to find gratitude in our own lives. You can call me grateful because this is the meaning of my name. Today, even after thousands of years, we all know that the word Jew is still associated with its original meaning, gratitude, reminding us all of the strength and the enduring power of gratitude that we have always sustained, that's been with us even through the most difficult of times. Thank you so much, everybody, and I want to say I'm receiving amazing comments on my Facebook page, even as I speak. Let's take a look. Thank you so much. Let's see, Jean Marie, thank you so much. Good morning to Peter Hirschhorn, to Richard Ruttenberg, who asks for forgiveness for coming on late. Richard, you're always on time. Whenever you come, it's very much appreciated. So good morning to you, Shavua Tov, and greetings to everybody. Now, this holiday of Purim, and we're inviting everyone to take part of it, we masquerade. On Purim, nothing is as it seems. Let's go through this, right? That ferocious monster is really a sweet, shy Sarah from second grade. That beautiful Queen Esther with that jewel-studded crown is really your brother, Moshe. Is that a gigantic three-cornered poppy seed-filled cookie walking down the street? See, if you live in an area where many are celebrating the holiday of Purim, you will find all kinds of people walking around the streets dressed up in these different ways. Of course, how did little Michael grow that luxuriant white beard? Why? So that's our question today. Why do we disguise ourselves on Purim? Because on Purim, nothing is as it seems. Was the banishment of Vashti simply one of those things that happened when that debauched Persian emperor Ahasuerus got drunk? Was it just coincidence that Mordechai happened to overhear a plot to kill the king? As we all know, in the Megillah, we have a very, very detailed account of the assassination attempt by Bigsan Viserys to knock out Ahasuerus. Did Ahasuerus choose Esther to be his queen because she happened to be the most beautiful woman in the empire? Was it plain bad luck for bad Haman that he happened to come to visit Ahasuerus just when the king was having Mordechai's heroic deed read to him? Was it Esther's charm and Ahasuerus' flippancy that made the king suddenly hang, his favorite minister? So Purim is a holiday instituted to be understood at the time when, during that time where we see the hand of Hashem hidden behind so many different things. In a certain sense, we disguise ourselves in these different crazy ways to remind ourselves how, in a certain sense, behind all of these things I've just mentioned, God really was disguising himself behind this Persian palace soap opera. When God took the Jewish people out of Egypt on Passover, the entire neighborhood, from Giza to Gaza, from Memphis to Mesopotamia, the whole world was resonating with miracles and it was amazing things going on. When the small jug of oil burnt for 8 days on Hanukkah, even the most skeptical amongst us saw this as the act of God. Purim, which means lots, is unique in that the most miraculous of salvations was shrouded in garments of nature, luck, coincidence. God was hidden and remained hidden. His name does not once appear in the entire Megillah, in the scroll of Esther. So Purim is a time for masquerading. Esther, the actual I shall hide, is scrolled up. Even the poppy seeds filling, right? I look forward to buying the Hamantaschen. What's a Hamantaschen? It's like white dough of different kinds, filling up poppy seeds. It's even the poppy seeds filling is barely peeking out of the folds of the dough of Hamantaschen, or is it prune? Not to mention the holy concealed meat, because the many who eat on Purim, kreplach, right, which again is a concealed, it conceals the meat. So not paradoxically, Purim is the most joyous festival on the Jewish calendar. It's great to celebrate miracles, just as we're discussing the importance of celebrating life and gratitude each day. But how often does a miracle come our way? Far more exhilarating is the realization that nothing is as it seems, that God is always pulling the strings, even when things seem to be just happening. Let's talk a little bit about the Graga. I just want to pause for a moment and say hello to a longtime friend who is actually watching us in Israel. So to Binyamin and to Renee Payton, we say good morning. And Binyamin Levine, formerly of Long Beach, Long Island, is now living in Shiloh in Israel. And thank you for your shout out. One day we look forward to meeting you again, Binyamin, you and your Baruch Hashem and your wonderful family. So, we do have two holidays called Purim and Hanukkah amongst the many holidays. And they're interestingly different. See, on Hanukkah, we get spiritual. How do we celebrate Hanukkah? Lighting oil and light, songs of praise. On Purim, we get very physical. We go out of our way to find money for the poor, Matonis Levionim. We go out of our way to increase unity and friendship by giving foods, Mishloach Manos to friends. We have a big festival meal, Sudas Purim, and lots of other exciting activities. So there's much more of a physical focus. So Hanukkah speaks more of a spiritual, and Purim represents more of a physical. But there's an interesting common denominator between the two holidays. The customs surrounding the two festivals both include a spinning toy. On Hanukkah, it is customary to play with a dreidel, a spinning top inscribed with the Hebrew letters that form an acronym of the phrase Nes Gadol Hayasham. A great miracle happened there, or happened here if you have one in Israel. On Purim, we also have a spinning toy, a spinning noise-making device called a graga, and that's used to drown out the name of the wicked Haman. So, interesting. As different as they are, they both have this common noise-making, or this, you could say, a spinning kind of top. Still, there's a difference. Think about it. The dreidel is spun from above. Your hand's on top and it spins, and the heavier piece is below. While the graga is turned from below. You have a handle underneath, and the big piece turns on top. On Hanukkah, what's the significance of these two aspects? On Hanukkah, God violated all laws of nature to save us. As a small band of fighters defeated one of the mightiest armies on the earth, and a cruse of oil burnt for 8 days. So there was a violation of nature. On Purim, the salvation came about in what could easily be seen as a series of lucky coincidences. King Achashverosh gets angry at his wife, Vashti. He selects Esther as queen in her place. Mordechai happens to overhear a plot to kill him, and he saves the king's life. And Haman happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, just when Mordechai's deed is being read on the night that Achashverosh couldn't sleep. Esther used her position, and so on. In fact, one hardly notices God's name is really not mentioned at all in the book of Esther. In other words, on Hanukkah, the divine salvation of miracles comes from above, while on Purim it comes from below, disguised in ordinary events. Hanukkah celebrates the fact that our commitment to God and God's commitment to us transcends all natural bonds. Therefore, it presented itself in forms of miracles. Purim celebrates that our lives also pervade. Our relationship with God also is included in the most ordinary, every details of our life. Very, very important for us to appreciate that. We want to say hello to Sharon Jacobs. Chag Purim, thank you so much. Chag Purim Sameach to Patty Fuchs. Hi, Patty. I hope the doctor's doing well. And the entire family, of course, our best wishes to Masha. Now, there's an interesting, let's continue now. We talked a little bit about Purim. Let's go a little bit more about other aspects of what we're talking about in our learning today. There's an intriguing mitzvah recorded in the Torah portion, which is my bar mitzvah portion this past Shabbos, yesterday. It speaks that you shall bind the choshen, the breastplate, by its rings to the rings of the ephod, which is an apron, so that the choshen, this breastplate, should not budge from the ephod. The meaning of these words is that this breastplate, we're talking about the special clothes worn by the high priest. The choshen, the breastplate, and the ephod, the apron, were 2 of 8 special garments worn by the high priest while performing the service in the tabernacles. The choshen was the breastplate set with 12 precious stones, each inscribed with the name of one of the 12 tribes of Israel. It was worn on the breast over the heart. The ephod, which was this apron-like garment, covered the lower back of the body, from the waist to the ankles, with a belt that tied in the front. So it's like having an apron. Instead of being in the front, the apron, the longer part, was from the waist to the ankles, and the tie, the actual belt was tied in the front. 2 gold rings sewn on this ephod's belt lined up with the 2 gold rings sewn to the bottom corners of the breastplate. These were bound together with ribbons of blue wool. It is of vital importance, the Torah stresses, that the 2 should remain securely fastened at all times that the priestly garments are worn. And the Torah says, the choshen, this breastplate, shall not budge from the ephod, from this apron. But why? And I can tell everybody listening and watching couldn't sleep last night. They were worried about this question. Why? Why is the insistence that the breastplate that was on the front and the apron, which was on the back, have to be tightly linked at all times? Why bother if they are disconnected or only loosely connected? I mean, what's going on over here? One answer, presented in the mystical tradition, is very moving. The two garments, the breastplate, seated atop the heart, the front, the heart. The apron was hanging on the lower back, represent the upper. These two garments, one was on the front, over the heart, and one was on the back. They represent the upper and lower dimensions of life, or the forward part and the backward part, aspects of our human existence. The breastplate represents those individuals whose hearts were aflame with spiritual passion and ecstasy, while the apron symbolized a person who struggled with backward temptations, those crass and lowly impulses and dispositions. This is not merely a distinction between two types of people. It is really a distinction between two aspects that exist in each of our own lives as well. Few other people who can be defined as breastplates or aprons exclusively. Most of us vacillate between backward and frontward tendencies, between lower and higher aspirations. We celebrate moments of light, but we must also quarrel with the darkness, with the trauma, with the addiction, with the emotional prisons. At times, life is a cruise through a tranquil, beautiful sea, down to the Bahamas. Yet at other times, it consists of navigation through turbulent waves, battlefields, and war zones. There are moments we sense our calling, yet there are other times we yearn to discover our true selves. We struggle to find our place in this world. Crudeness, superficiality, and lowliness may at any moment really consume our multi-dimensional personalities. Therefore, the Torah steps in and instructs us to tightly link the breastplate to the apron so that they should not budge. We must somehow learn to integrate the two parts of ourselves without escaping into either element. We do not retreat, the Torah is saying, into our higher self and forget about our lower self. For when the lower self resurfaces, we might fall hard. On the other hand, do not allow ourselves to be swept away by our lower self and ignore our transcendental aspirations, for such a life is likely to leave us deeply thirsty and anxious. We must learn the art of integration. We must come to terms with the truth that the breastplate and the apron together constitute a very objective of existence. To confront darkness and transform it into light, to create harmony out of the building blocks of diversity, which, of course, today is a dirty word. It's either my way or the highway. If I don't agree with you, I have a name for you. That's what we're dealing with today. There's no integration. Forget about it. But the Torah is telling us this week we must learn individually and as society to have our aprons and our breastplate both very much tied together. A story is told about an elderly Chinese woman who owned two large pots. Each hung at the end of a pole, which she carried every day on her shoulders to fill with water from the stream located at the end of the village. One of the pots was complete and always delivered a full portion of water. The other pot was cracked and arrived home each day only half full. Of course, the complete pot was proud of its accomplishments. It felt really good about itself. The poor cracked pot, on the other hand, was ashamed of its own imperfections. It was miserable that it could only do half of what it had been made to do. After 6 years of what perceived to be a bitter failure, the humbled, broken pot finally opened its heart to the woman at the stream. "I hate myself The crackpots cried. "I'm so useless and valueless. What purpose does my existence have when each day I leaked half of my water? I'm a loser." The old woman smiled and says, "Did you notice that there are flowers on your side of the path, but not on the other pot side? I have always known that about your flaw, so I planted flower seeds on your side of the path. Each day, while we walk back from the stream, you have the opportunity to water them. For 6 years, I have been able to pick these beautiful flowers to decorate our home. Without you being just the way you are, we would have never created this beauty together." Fascinating insights, and of course, giving us a reminder that nobody, even if we are decide of ourselves being a crackpot, there's always good coming from us. I want to say thank you again. We're receiving such amazing posts on our Facebook and other places. Thank you so much, and everybody listening as well. Please, those who listen to WHBC, I welcome you. I thank you for taking the time out every Sunday in the morning or at 11 p.m. at night to listen. And of course, please let your friends and neighbors know that you can always go back, and wherever you can go to the actual website of the station, which is ncc.education, I think, right? .edu, or no, nccradio.org. Right. Let me thank you so much, Kim. nccradio.org, and you can always listen to this and pass it on to others. Let's continue. I want to say good morning to Leah De Leon. Thank you so much. Good morning to you and all the friends out there. Let's continue our little thoughts for today for Purim, and again reminding everyone tomorrow night on the Jewish community, on the Jewish calendar, we usher in the great holiday of Purim, and Queen Esther invites us, part of Torah, to come to hear the Megillah at night and by day. So check out your neighborhood where you can go and hear the Megillah live, and of course exchange gifts and help the poor, the mitzvahs of Mishalach Manas, Matanas Levyonim, and wherever you may be, on late Tuesday afternoon, sit down to a nice Purim meal. And the reason we sit down to that meal, of course, because we know at the beginning of the Megillah, we read about the big meal that Achashverosh threw. He threw a party that took 6 months and another 7 days in Shushan. And of course, all kinds of negative things came from there. So we sit down and we transform it. Instead of being a meal of negativity, of hatred and destruction, as the Megillah tells us, we sit down in unity and in friendship, and we transform it into a positive, uplifting, and meaningful experience. Let's talk about frogs now. Oy gewalt. A lonely frog, desperate for any form of company, telephoned the psychic hotline to find out what the future has in store for him. His personal psychic advisor advises him, "You're going to meet a beautiful young girl who will want to know everything about you." The frog is thrilled and says, "This is great. Where will I meet her? At work? At a party?" "No," says the psychic. "You're going to meet her in a biology class." Oy gewalt. Kim doesn't like that. Oh, no. Okay, she's shaking. Kim, I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, as my engineer, in Hebrew school, what did you dress up for Purim? Did you have those kinds of gatherings?
Wow, that's interesting. I definitely had Purim gatherings, but I don't remember what I dressed up as. And honestly, in defense, I can't even tell you the only costume I ever remember having for the American thing of Halloween. Actually, I probably dressed up as a soccer player, because that's usually what
You like that?
I played soccer, and it was an easy costume, and yeah. So.
Okay. So Purim itself is...
But I remember the holiday in general was great. I remember going to synagogue and the groggers, and it was a lot of fun. I just don't specifically remember my costumes.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. Good memories. So you see, as our brothers and sisters in Ukraine face, what's going on over there, I'd like to share with you a medrash from on the Purim story, which occurred nonetheless in present-day Iran, in ancient Persia. It is a fascinating and enigmatic medrash describing the plot of Haman, the villain of the Purim story. Here, listen carefully. What is a suitable parable for this vicious Haman? To what can he be compared? And the Medrash goes on to say, to a bird which made its nest on the shore of the sea, and then the sea came and swept away the nest. The bird says, I will not budge from here until the sea becomes dry land, and the dry land becomes the sea. What did the bird do? It took some water from the sea in its mouth and dropped it on the dry land, and took dirt from the land and dropped it into the sea. Its friend came and stood alongside, and he said to the bird, you ill-fated, hapless one, how do you ever hope to succeed in destroying the sea? Similarly, Hashem says, fool of fools, what do you think you're going to do? You're going to be able to do this, and you're going to think you're going to go through with your terrible decree, as we all know Haman had. And of course, we know what happened to him. That this whole story of Megillah was saved, and Haman was hung up. At first glance, the Medrash is saying that the annihilation was impossible and ludicrous as the draining of the ocean. A beak full by a bird. The bird is so blinded by its anger at the sea for destroying its nest that it doesn't realize its absurdity of the quest. So what's going on over here? What is the role of the metaphor of this medrash in Talmudical understanding? How does it explain and clarify this concept, an abstract idea? What is the concept being clarified via a metaphor of a bird attempting to drain an ocean? And there are many other questions as well. And let's get to the main part of this thing, because think of the bird as quite foolish in this strategy to dry out the ocean drop by drop. Come on, how is it going? And it's a ludicrous idea that Haman, the viceroy, who had the cooperation of Achashverosh, had this whole thought out plan. Why? How did this all happen? In truth, the simple fable in the Medrash captures a secret behind, currently, this wave of anti-Semitism, an inner conflict, and the ultimate meaning of our long history. In this midrashic metaphor, we are invited into a journey into the heart of what it means to be who we are, and to ensure Jewish continuity. What was it that really perturbed Haman about us? What was it about us that struck such a deep chord in so many of Haman's then and throughout the ages, including in our very times? Like what did he say? That why? It's one of the old mysteries of civilization. Are we really that different? So the Medrash, in its imitable way, gives us a perspective. Like the little desperate bird trying to take revenge for a nest which the sea swept away, Haman felt as long as there were Jewish people alive, the nest he attempted to build would be washed away. 1 millennium before Haman was born, at the foot of the lone mountain, the Jewish people received a gift that transformed their destiny and changed the landscape of human civilization. It was an experience that imbued life with nobility of transcendence, majesty of divine ethics, a grandeur of holiness. The gift of the Torah inculcated us with great moral and spiritual responsibility, but it simultaneously bestowed upon us a Jewish heart, a home, a family, and this glow of eternity. But what in heaven, but what is heaven for one person may be hell for another. Piano lessons for 4-year-old Mozart is a paradise, while for another child, the lessons may be living purgatory. So heaven for us was hell, so to speak, for Hamans of the world. If God exists, then the moral law prevails, and there must be limits to power and self-aggrandizement. So if God exists, the barbarian must vanquish himself. Haman felt that the two diametrical, opposing, and mutually exclusive powers were competing for the heart of humanity. If his nest was to take root, he's got to get rid of us. 2,300 years later, this notion was captured again by another Haman called Adolf Hitler, Yamach Shemai. He remarked that the Jewish people have inflicted two wounds on the world: circumcision for the body and the consciousness for the soul. I come to free mankind from their shackles. But Haman, the avid student of history, knew that this was no simple task. He had seen many powerful and seemingly permanent nests washed away by the sea. He'd seen Pharaoh, Caesarea, Goliath, Sancherib, and Nebuchadnezzar. They also attempted to drain the sea, to eradicate us once and for all. And where are they? All forgotten. So like that poor frog that ends up having its moment of glory in the biology class, all of these cultures and civilizations today appear only in the Wikipedia. Yet, we keep on going. Not only in Wikipedia, but in real life. But what is the secret of the sea? This is where Haman came up with this ingenious strategy. He believed that he had the final solution, get rid of him finally, to solve this problem. And that was by taking beakful of water and dumping it on the dry land. My friends, this is the key to the puzzle that we're talking about versus sea and dry land. It relates to how we look at the Talmud. It relates to the following story. The evil Roman Empire had prohibited Torah study. Pappus, the son of Yehuda, came and found Rabbi Akiva making large public gatherings and teaching Torah. So Pappus said to him, Akiva, aren't you afraid of the authorities? Rabbi Akiva said, I will give you a parable. A fox is walking along a river. He sees the fish frantically scurrying from place to place. From who are you running, says the fox. Oh, from the nets and the traps of the fishermen. Why don't you come onto the dry land and we will live happily together, just as our forefathers did? The fish replied, is it really you whom they call the cleverest of animals? You are not clever, you're a fool. If we are afraid of the place, in the place of vitality, how much more so in the place of our death? Rabbi Akiva concluded, if the life is tough as we are sitting and studying Torah, how much more so if we stop to do that? So what we're saying is, we live within the world, the habitat, the source of our vitality. That's where we live. That's where we breathe, where we thrive, and most creative. Like a fish washed up at shore, if we deprive ourselves of what we are, the moral standards and the obligations and the observances, we're certainly going to find real struggle if we find ourselves in the dry land, in an environment unsuitable for that spiritual DNA to flourish and express itself fully. He, like the fish, will flip and flop, experiment with all kinds of different ideologies and lifestyles, desperately attempting to find solace for the person's aching soul. He can become a Darwinist, he becomes a Marxist, he becomes a Bundist, he becomes something else, whatever you have. But of course, the person looking in those places on dry land will fail to realize his essential nature, that he has to remain in the water. Therefore, Haman understood what he had to do was to dry up the sea, sever the relationship between ourselves and Torah. His goal must be to antiquate the Torah, to teach us how to become land animals. He must invite them, in the words of the fox, to live together with us in peace, as our forefathers did. Once the fish was out of the water, it would be vulnerable for destruction. And the time seemed ripe for this endeavor. That's, in a nutshell, really what the bigger efforts were. And the Talmud asks, what was the annihilation? Like, how did those come about? How come this big decree hung over our heads at that time? And the Talmud says, because they enjoyed the feast of the wicked man Achashverosh. There was a big feast, as I mentioned earlier on, and everybody came there. As the book of Esther relates in the opening chapter, there was a major feast, and the Jews of Shushan enjoyed the feast. What do you mean? What's the problem over here? The Talmud does not state that they were guilty of eating non-kosher food, but that they enjoyed it. That's the problem. You know, if a person has to go to such places, one thing, out of diplomacy, out of peace, keeping the peace, but to enjoy it, to enjoy the feast. This is the idea of, in a sense, stepping out of our own environment of the water onto a dry land and imagining we can exist that way. That was Haman's strategy. Dry up the sea, take us out of the water, introduce us to the dry land, and of course we would become vulnerable. So God says to him, fool of fools, I myself planned, and I'm going to show you what's going to happen. And of course we know how things turned around. And as we would say, as Paul Harvey would say, now you know the rest of the story. So there's much more we can talk about and the excuses given for all the kinds of negativity out there. But at the end of the day, the most important thing of Purim is unity. Unity that comes through coming together to hear the Megillah. Unity that comes when we go out of our way to find poor people on Purim. Matanas Levyanim, we create unity by sending gifts of food to each other, and of course sitting down to a meal as well, whether it's at home or in a synagogue and your local temple event. All of these things emphasize the importance of unity. When a person, and unity again comes, how does a person live a life of unity? And I would dare to say, good morning to Jeffrey Hirsch and to Larry Polonetsky, that the key to unity is gratitude. If a person wakes up in the morning and says Moida Ani and lives a day founded by gratitude, there's always going to be unity. If you see and look at the world and see the divine hand and the divine providence in every aspect of our life, there's so much less judgmentalism going on and much more appreciation in every one of us, whoever we may be, whatever background we may be, have that spark of God, that vitality of God that has put us on this world for a purpose, for a mission, and nothing can stop us in bringing goodness and kindness to this world. And that is why Purim is so important for all of us to celebrate. It's not a holiday of great open miracles, but on the contrary, finding the miracles hidden in nature. The Hebrew word for nature is teva, and teva is from the root tubu, which, like tubu b'yamsuf, it was swallowed up. It's basically, think of it this way, when God first put the light in the world, the sun and the moon, wow, it's like a miracle, but it kept on shining and by day and by night. So we got used to it, so we gave it a name, nature. But really, nature is just as godly as everything else. And therefore, Purim allows us to pause and to think about a life in the normal, natural way of things and to appreciate. And that appreciated as being, obviously, the hand of God. So again, going back to our noisemakers or gragas, the graga has the hand underneath. And the dreidel has your hand on top. And this represents these two aspects. Either you see the hand of God on top of everything, and that inspires all the miracles of Hanukkah, or you find it within the handle, within your own, in your own nature, and that the world, the noise, the tumult of the world, which we tend to explain away as being something very superficial, but really is the hand of Hashem constantly behind us. In my last few moments here, and offering and best wishes to everybody for a wonderful, joyous Purim, I'd like to very briefly mention a little point that the Megillah speaks about Mordechai standing outside the palace every single day after Esther was taken by the king, this whole competition for a new queen, and he stood there every day, he walked by to see how she was doing every single day. And we discussed this on Shabbos. How does this fit into the whole story, as I mentioned before? And there were so many major events in this unfolding of the story of Purim. Why was this included? And, he was a kind person. He was a caring person. He was worried about her. The Medrash examines this and explains that because he showed so much caring for Esther, God, rewarded him to become this important leader of caring for others. Because he showed such caring for that just one Esther, he had the ability to show kindness and become that leader at the time, to show much caring for all of his people. And I learned from this the importance of what it means to us on Purim, that a true caring leader of many starts with caring for an individual. If you're a person who cares for somebody, makes a phone call, calls them up, reminds them it's Purim, do whatever it may be, if you can share your kindness to one individual, you will end up being able to care for many more people as well. This is your host, Rabbi Perl, wishing you a happy Purim and looking forward to continuing. Stay well and all the best. And please remember to join us on Tuesday morning at 7 a.m. to be able to join us, make the minyan, and hear the Megillah, the whole Megillah. Stay well, everybody. Thank you so much.